Join the charge. Like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, heck, we're even on TikTok. There's something for everyone here. We're excited to engage with you. We hope you'll join us moving forward.
Click that like and subscribe button and go sign up on superchargedstocks.com and let's keep you notified. Good morning, it's Andrew of Supercharged Stocks. Today we're catching up with Frank Holmes, who's the interim CEO over HIVE Blockchain Technologies. It's been a couple of weeks, actually over 6 weeks since we've caught up with HIVE, and lots has happened, and most importantly, great earnings have come out. So we want to touch base on that. I also have a couple questions in regards to the energy crisis in Europe, how that could affect HIVE, on top of the Bitcoin futures that have finally been accepted and rolling out in the States. We're also going to touch on a couple comments made by JP Morgan's Jamie Dimon, as well as the CEO of BlackRock, Larry Fink. So join us. Look forward to learning something new from Mr. Frank Holmes. Good morning, Mr. Holmes. How are you doing today?
Outstanding, my friend. And it's Bitcoin time.
Outstanding. That's definitely the way I like to start an interview. Listen, let's just jump right into it. I think everyone wants to talk about the earnings. Some great earnings report came out. Let's just dive into there and tell us what some of the great earnings reports that came out today or last week.
There's such a negative narrative with Ethereum, proof of stake, proof of work argument. Andrew, I've been listening to this since HIVE first started. It's 5 years pushing, that this narrative, and 4 years ago when it was launched. It's much more complex. That ecosystem wants proof of stake. If they try to do it overnight, it could be a disaster, like what's happening in Europe, going green overnight, and coal prices going to $1,000 a ton. I mean, it's just so disruptive it's just fraught with risk. So the second most important currency out there, Ethereum, could self-destruct, just like remember originally we had Ethereum Classic came from a mistake made. So I don't believe it's going to happen the way they keep hoping for. And two, I believe that every time they come up with an upgrade, all it does is shrink the supply. And Metcalfe's law says that if you keep shrinking supply and demand keeps growing, prices are going to go up exponentially. So it's a year later, and Ethereum has outperformed Bitcoin. Bitcoin are like gold bugs, and I love them, but it's like a religion to them. The Ethereum is more like the silver world in my comparison. So it's more volatile. So we hodl Ethereum, and in a rising market, we make much more. So let's back up. We make money by two forms of earnings. One is from operations, mining the coins. Two is from our investments. Our investments could be in DeFi, or more important, is hodling Bitcoin and hodling Ethereum. So as those assets rise, we have to go mark to market, and it's an exponential increase. Not only are daily revenues increasing, and our run rate today is over $700,000. Our assets, which a year ago, which were less than $10 million, are like $160 million. So it's recognizing that we mine Ethereum because if I converted it every time to buy Bitcoin, I wouldn't have green Bitcoin.
Yeah.
But I would be mining at $3,000 a coin.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of charts that you've put in here, and it kind of alludes to some of this too. And it's more in regards to where the stock is, but like your market cap to the revenue you've generated, as well as just the revenue in your fourth quarter, and just the gross income in your fourth quarter. Those are very impressive. They've grown very well, and in part because of the business and the operations and hitting all the milestones, but also because you're going to be holding when this fork comes for Ethereum. That's going to play a big role moving forward.
Big role. And what's happening now is that Bitcoin dollar value is just rising so greatly at 62,000 change. It makes all of a sudden our daily revenue is bigger Bitcoin than Ethereum. until we complete the build out of the 16 megawatts of electricity in Sweden. Well, that's going to tap on, that will increase our Ethereum footprint. But right now, if you converted all of our Ethereum and Bitcoin production, we're at 13.5 Bitcoins a day. That's the biggest.
Yeah.
So I'm an old investment guy that likes to focus on returns on invested capital. We've had the least amount of dilution of all of our peers. And so therefore we have the strongest revenue per share. Now everyone's betting these other companies with all those machines will come on time. But if you read the media every day, there's been nothing but delays and disappointments with getting equipment. So
yes.
We experienced that a year ago. So we're cognizant and sensitive over these delays and disappointments. But so far, we said we'd have an exahash for the investors by August. We delivered. We believe we're going to have another exahash by mid-December. And I think we're on track to do that. The buildings the campus we're building in New Brunswick is so exciting. You know, Andrew, we bought that during COVID. We couldn't even get to find one guy that found a way to, by stealth, to get in there, like he was on a Star Trek, to beat me down to get into New Brunswick because they wouldn't allow you to drive across in your car or fly in. But he was able to get in, did the due diligence to close that deal. That's going to go from 50 megawatts of potential. It was 30 megawatts existing, going to 50, which will be ready by mid-December. It's going to go to 80 that I think potential is over 100 megawatt green, clean energy in New Brunswick.
And New Brunswick would love to have the business. It's great for Canada and great for New Brunswick. I'm glad you touched on energy because I want to get your thoughts because it does tie in directly to crypto mining. But with the energy crisis in Europe, have you guys locked in your energy prices? Are they long-term contracts? What's that look like? How does it affect HIVE in any way? Maybe you can touch on that. It's a big topic, but you alluded to it early, and we'd love to have your insight.
It's a great question because there are different dynamics in different countries, such as in the state of New York or Texas. It's they have a great futures market internal that you can hedge out your position for your energy needs. In Sweden, it's very sophisticated. So last year we locked in less than 2 cents a cost of electricity. And right now we've been basically rolling into the hedge because this is the seasonal pattern where electricity starts to come down and then it starts to rise going into the second half of next year. And so we'll establish between now and Christmas our hedge book, and it'll be, I think probably it's more expensive than last year, but it's probably going to be like 3 cents. The big issue in Europe is just the need for natural gas and coal and all those new requirements has created a massive inflationary binge in oil and gas prices. And because of that, coal prices have gone through the roof. Yes. So I think it's really interesting that every time they try to jam through that green movement, it's actually tripping up and causing global inflation. I wrote a piece on this. We have a YouTube on it that fake numbers, the CPI numbers are in fact, if you use the 1980 data, the algorithm, when inflation hit 20%, if you use that algorithm today, it's running at 14% inflation. So that's one reason why crypto is taking off. I think that the millennial kids, I saw my Jets ETF, were much smarter than Wall Street. 39, almost, I was told 39,000 approximately came in and it doubled for them. Yeah, it doubled. And everyone this time last year was negative on the airlines. They made a lot of money. Now, a lot of these young people that have gone into the crypto space, they're different than gold bugs. Gold bugs remind me of defensive lawyers. It's about preservation of capital against inflation. And gold has outperformed the S&P 500 this century by 250%. So having a 10% weighting and rebalance has been great. But crypto and Bitcoin, Ethereum, it's like litigators. They're very aggressive. They want to make the big score, win the big lawsuit, and make tens of billions of dollars. So they want to be ahead of inflation in a different way. One is conservative, one is much more assertive and aggressive. And in that space, you're seeing that that there's much more of a respect for history to understand what happens when you have incredible money printing. And yes. I think that's what's driving Bitcoin.
Yeah, I'm glad you touched on that because even here, living in beautiful Vancouver, everyone's touched on the fact that if you just go to the grocery store, you're noticing smaller weight in packaging of things, but higher prices. All that starts to add up, and we can see between the cost of living and eating, it's soaring. So you have to find an investment that's going to beat that, and especially that spike. And there's the best place right now would be in this crypto, or one that's technologically driven, where there's a lot of room for that kind of growth in a hurry. So it's wonderful to see that. And maybe you can make a reference too, because you've got such a big history on gold and silver. Maybe make a comment to those, because we've got both in our camp over here that love both for different reasons.
I think that gold and silver are probably the best defensive buy, because they've not appreciated in the past 12 months the way real estate has as a real asset. Art is appreciated more. Commodities have appreciated more, except for gold and silver. So I think that the G7 countries, especially their finance ministers, have been operating like a cartel. And when I said that at first, everyone was like, "Oh, you can't say the cartel." And I said, well, the fact that they came out with a flat tax, a 15% for corporate taxes, that's collective bargaining with each other. So why not 15 go to 20? Why not 20, 25? Why not? And so that sort of socialist mindset model of controlling capital, except for the government, has unaway printing of money, but we're going to control how much capital is being raised by the private sector with this minimum corporate tax. Anytime that's happened, it trips up innovation. Money always goes towards most respected. And where there's more latitude for having a higher return on invested capital. So taxes becomes an important component of that. So I believe that gold is being artificially somehow suppressed in whatever I don't know how it'll happen, but it's out there. And when it pops, it'll be so fast. So I think that gold and silver are a wonderful buy, and institutions and firms like there's a couple of corporations have been buying gold also because it's way undervalued. But when it happens, it'll be in a New York second, and everyone else, they'll be saying, wow, what happened? But right now, it is Bitcoin, it is Ethereum, it is some of these other coins, but really those two beasts, gold and silver of the crypto space, are driving the enthusiasm. What is very different? Vancouver is an ecosystem that is very much into mining and understanding high-risk venture capital for exploration and development of a resource in any country in the world. So it's unique. But when you leave that ecosystem that's there and you start going around the world, there's no one showing up in Miami. There's no one in Paris. There's no one in London that's really coming together. But in crypto, there is. You have a crypto conference in Miami and 13,000 people, and scalpers were scalping tickets. I was in New York a couple of weeks ago, and it was more about wallets and security and audits, etc. Sold out. The Cipriani Hotel was $1,000 a night just packed. Wherever you go, London, sold out. Dubai, I was there last week in Dubai for alternative asset class management, and usually it's private equity, hedge funds, quant funds come and speak, etc. It was dominated by crypto. So I share with you that there's no junior mining there. There's no gold and silver junior mining. So the ecosystem for crypto is much broader and deeper, like the US economic engine is.
And I was going to ask this because it's leading into that whole kind of heavily regulated, and I don't mean having fair regulations on something, but where you've got a regulated, say, digital coin compared to outside the current environment we have, that you're tied in together. Once I think you take money from some firm, you start playing ball this way, you're locked in. You're going this direction. Whereas right now with crypto, especially Bitcoin, Ethereum, you're outside of that system, which is what makes it so attractive. But at the same time, there's adoption. So it's a mixed kind of, it's a leading question. And there's the adoption from the Bitcoin futures ETF, which just came out, which is great because it makes this crowd over here happy. But it's this dancing in between the two, where do you see, how do you see that ending up flowing in the near future? And I'm going to follow that up with a couple comments from other big names out there as well, and see what your response is.
Well, I believe that there is a race, a very competitive race between the governments of the G7 that come up with their own cryptocurrency and the independent ecosystem that's created it. We see that the more socialistic a country is, more centrally controlled they are. They do not like anything decentralized. They don't like decentralized media. They do not like decentralized money. They do not like decentralized investing. They want to control everything. And we really saw that clearly with China of getting rid of any competition as they're further ahead and coming with their digital money. And I think that is the trend, and it's going to happen. If we look at bearer money, what do you have for bearer money? It's only the cash in your hand. They can freeze your bank account, so that cash is really not yours. The government can freeze it easily. But if you have $1,000 cash in your hand, it's yours. There's no bearer certificates now. But if you have a wallet with Bitcoin in it or Ethereum, it's yours. So you can't do it with your real estate. Even your car, you can't drive without registering it every year and paying licenses and fees, etc. So that sort of schism is in the marketplace. And I think the governments are trying to wrestle with, how do we get a piece of this action? And wouldn't it be wonderful we can tax every tip out there?
Yeah.
We want to tax everything. And if every economic activity has to be digital and is going to have triple entry accounting because it's on blockchain, the transparency, then we'll be able to capture more assets for tax revenue. And I think that that's what's really, you're in this sort of competition, because we really saw 18 months ago when Libra came out, how the G20 countries just did a pile on with almost like hitting Facebook with their hockey sticks, a classic, brutal bloodbath on the hockey rink. And now they've changed their name, they've repositioned it, because all of a sudden they could really be a threat to the G20 finance mechanisms having their own currency. So they are very worried about that. They're fast tracking with their own digital money, and you're in that competition.
Yeah. And also, I was going to mention, it was the US, they just announced that they want to track every flow of cash over $600, because they want to tax, billionaires, make sure they're not moving money around. It's like, well, you think that would be a $10 million level, not a $600. $600 tells me you want to track every movement of anyone's money, what they're spending and what they're doing.
It's always more costly to the middle class and the poor people. But the narrative is very clever, because they're brilliant at the narrative. Let's go after the rich and get a lot of free media. But really, $600, I mean, that's huge to a working family, but it's nothing to a billionaire.
No.
So that's they manipulate the narrative, and there's a lot of FUD out there, but really it's to be able to control all fund flows.
And it's certainly, for me as well, the harder a grip, the tighter the grip that a lot of these countries are doing across the board in other different aspects of life as well, the more it's encouraging people my age, and certainly the younger ones, to go, I think I'd like to have something outside of this system, because it's like anything. The harder someone holds on to something, the probably faster it wants to get away.
Well, they don't realize, when Chavez was at Venezuela, he was able to manipulate the credit card so that if you're a Venezuelan coming to Miami, you couldn't buy clothes with that credit card. And you could only go to certain, like basically McDonald's to get food. About currency controls of money leaving the country. And I think it's really interesting that that's what the government is going to eventually do. And they'll be able to say, well, we don't think like we had in America in the 1920s, alcohol is good for you. So we're going to prohibition, that whole concept, which only backfired and created a bigger black market with the mafia and the Al Capone story. But I think there's just a general propensity by big centralized governments that want to control all your spending behavioral patterns. And it's flawed thinking, but I think smarter people say that they've been buying. One of the other things they've been able to do is stamps. Stamps is always a form of a bearer that had a value, and you can move stamps from here, from a collector's stamp, from New York to London.
Yes, yes. Now I've got one more question, and this one's a bit more of a fun one, because not to start any rivalries, or adversarial competition here, but I think you will have seen that JP Morgan's Jamie Dimon came out aggressively against Bitcoin. And then Larry Fink, the CEO over at BlackRock, chimed in and kind of said, hey, I don't really understand it too much. I'm playing around in crypto, but maybe I'm with Jamie on this, thinking that Bitcoin is worthless. What would you say to those two gentlemen, who I'd also put in brackets, are heavily vested in the current system? What would your response be to them?
They have to have another agenda. Fake left and go right, or fake right and go left. Every time I've seen this, when Jamie Dimon was so anti-Bitcoin back in 2017, all through 2018. Why? Because he was coming up with his own stable coin. That's all. And all that negative narrative stopped from JP Morgan and Jamie Dimon after they launched in February of 2019 their own stable coin. It was only a month later, Facebook launched their Libra coin. So we're seeing that prior to that, Facebook was anti any advertising on their site, any marketing or branding of anything with crypto. So I think it's interesting for me to see that every time this sort of negative narrative is because they're trying to slow down the industry's evolution so that they can get caught up.
Yes. That was my guess, was that, listen, if you're working along with those creating the regulations and they're going to be more in your favor, well, why would you want to rock that boat? That wouldn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And so for them to kind of buy themselves more time.
Have I told you my Dimon story?
No, please tell me.
It's very important for your listeners that are my age, the millennials, because this is not my age, but I'm a baby boomer. I wish I was a millennial, but I'm a baby boomer. But what happened, and they relate to this more, in history, there was a massive diamond discovery. The Oppenheimers realized that in the 30s, and they created a cartel to cap that supply from hitting the market. After World War II was over, they went to Ayers advertising agency, and they started this campaign of that you needed a diamond, which was tangible, to validate something intangible called love and a commitment to be engaged. So intangible, love, tangible, the diamond was the contract of commitment. Less than 5% of people use the diamond as the commitment contract. It's now 80%. Then 65, De Beers did it all over again in Japan. Less than 2% of the population were using a diamond to become engaged, and now it's 80%. So what does that tell you? Now they're doing it in China. But now I would say that they can't control the supply. But Bitcoin is capped at 21 million coins. And I think it's really important to recognize that if there's enough people that people trust this diamond, went from $10 to $100 to $1,000 to $10,000 a carat, because they trust. All you have to do is have trust. So if you have 13,000 nodes around the world validating transactions for Bitcoin, you've created this trust network all over the world. And Ethereum is even, I think, a bigger network of validators. You are going to, it's very hard to dismantle that like diamond market was. So Metcalfe's law says that if you basically cut supply and you increase the interest of trust, then prices go exponentially. And that's what we're witnessing today. It's probably the most predictive thing that's out there in the marketplace. What's interesting with Ethereum is that NFTs, first stable coins, then DeFi, then NFTs sucked up supply. The supply has been actually more significantly contracted than the halving of Bitcoin production last May. So I remain very bullish on both of them for different reasons. HIVE's position is that we did last quarter. We were very proud to show we did 38 million in revenue and made 18 million. And a lot of that came from also operations. And we've spent over $80 million in upgrading all of our facilities. We used the ATM to raise another $80 million. But as we hold all those coins, they've gone from when I took over control of this from Genesis Mining in 2019, June, we had less than $5 million in liquid assets. We have over 150 million today.
Yeah, it's incredible. So what you mentioned, just while we wrap this up, great milestones so far. You've hit them all during COVID. You've got the operations in New Brunswick. You kind of highlighted, and we're hoping that and encouraged by the next earnings, you're feeling quite strong that you'll hit that milestone as well. What should we be paying attention to?
Lots of Bitcoin. We're mining Bitcoin. We're telling the world we're mining lots of it, and it's growing. We're at 1.2 exahash, and it will grow by Christmas. It will be, I think our models suggest that if everything shows up on time, we'll hit 2 exahash. We build out Sweden with all the new NVIDIA chips. That's going to add another exahash. So it's all very exciting.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for spending time and helping to educate myself and the viewers. We really appreciate you letting us know how everything is going over at Hive.
Last thing is just people have to remember 2 things. One is the DNA of volatility. The volatility of the stock market 70% of the time is a non-event to go up or down 1%. Gold is exactly the same as the S&P 500. Gold stocks are 2 times, but Bitcoin is 6 times. Ethereum is 7 times greater on a daily basis, the volatility. And Hive is even bigger because we mine both. So when you look at that, understand it has its own DNA of volatility, and Tesla is just slightly behind us in its volatility. So that's the last part. The other part is stay optimistic. Think about the future. Yeah. Crypto is going to become part of the metaverse. And that's the big future. How it will be, no one knows exactly. It's not a straight line. It's like the internet in the 90s. Who knew it when Ask Jeeves was around and AOL that Google would replace them in Facebook? So it's a new world, and it's recognizing forward thinking requires optimism. Optimism requires gratitude. You have to be thankful that you woke up this morning. Be thankful of your family. Be thankful of where you went to school. Find something to be thankful, helps you to be more optimistic and capture early new opportunities like Hive.
Thank you so much, Mr. Holmes. I really appreciate it. Have a great day.
Thank you.